latest interest in 9/11 attacks, especially from mega viral profiles such as Tucker Carlson. It seems that the 9/11 truth movement, which was dead for hundreds of years, it seems is becoming coming back to life. But the zombies, who I call the fringe conspiracy movement, are the ones walking around amongst the living, where they should stay deceased forever. These theories, such as no planes hitting the Pentagon in Shanksville, are the reasons why the 9/11 truth movement is another failure in the public spectrum today. And as of late, there's been some recent grumblings about Richard Gage, the former CEO and founder of Architects and Engineers, to have finally been coming back. And with the death of Roland Angle, Architects and Engineers was rudderless in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, wandering the heavy seas without any leadership. Well, in comes Richard Gage, and they invite him back. And basically, when he comes back, troubles are brewing because when Gage had left, uh, they were basically in transition about who to lead the group. And one of them was Roland Angle. Roland Angle was a very quiet and reserved man, didn't have the pull power that Richard Gage has. Gage is a professional grifter, one of the very best in the truth movement, and knows how to beg for a dollar. But thing was that Roland Angle was very uh, immemorable. He wasn't very popular. Uh, and so, with that, the Architects and Engineers organization was taking a gradual nosedive. And when you have, along with it, some really, you know, questionable members involved in it and pushing these really stupid, and I mean really stupid theories, such as no plane hitting the Pentagon, no plane crash in Shanksville, which is not supported by anyone besides this small group of people with CIT, the Citizens Investigation Team, which is also dead. Um, People like Andy Steele, who leads 9/11 Free Fall Radio, which basically interviews anybody that doesn't have any experience with the 9/11 attacks. Um, and an old Canadian zombie up north. I don't even know why they have this guy as a writer. All he does is write hit pieces on David Chandler or Wayne Cossey because they're not going to really fight back and argue back. They're men in their 60s and 70s. And I don't even know why this decaying zombie in north of Ontario is actually attacking these people. And that's because, he's a self professed expert for 9/11 and he's anything but. He doesn't even know a hijacker's name. You could show him the pictures in the background, which I chose, and he probably would tell you that, oh, they look like the Dave Clark Five. Yeah. So, let's take a look at Richard Gage's own Twitter page, shall we? And as you can see here, look, it says a slip twist to the cup and the lip, and failure to turn over control causes abrupt end to a great start. Now, I remember telling Nelson and Sean and Darren in a group chat that Rich Gage has come back. They actually voted him back in, and one of the first things they did, which was the right thing to do, was to fire Andy Steele and get rid of the zombie up north. And so they did that, which was a really good thing because these people just basically set, the organization back. And nobody's going to trust architects and engineers anymore because they basically had these two people. But now Richard Gage is now out of the loop again because he wanted total control of the group, which, he's, by the way, he is the founder, he is the CEO. And they voted him out because of his questionable conspiracies involving COVID, which, I don't even know why you entertain that, why you entertain COVID. You're not a scientist. You're not a doctor. You're not a physician. Shut up. I know my own limitations. Did COVID spread the way it spread? When we told the truth? Probably not. I mean, look, do I know that? No. Am I going to say that what I say is 100% true while representing an organization, right? Richard Gage's own thoughts are his thoughts, but he represents architects and engineers. They took a vote and they kicked him out in 2021. Now he's back, but then the deal falls apart because, as you can see, I'm going to read at the bottom. These were the points that Richard Gage wanted. One was the installation of us as board members with immediate voting rights at a board meeting at which we are present, with the officer assignment of Richard and Gail Gage. That's another thing. And I was against that initially, even though I dislike Richard Gage immensely. But he wasn't even there when they took the vote. All right. He brought that organization to the fold. All right. One of the most popular C-SPAN videos ever is when they interviewed him. I don't know why he doesn't know anything. God's sakes, Richard, if you ever watch this video, look, Richard, I know I've criticized you, but for good reason, because you don't know what you're talking about. You just don't. And when you make an ass out of yourself by going on shows and then talking about stuff and you repeat yourself, 9/11 is an inside job. World Trade Center 7 came down by controlled demolitions. If you've been saying this for 22 years without any results whatsoever, what are you doing this for? I think you're doing it for the grift, for money. You don't want to go to court because you know what would happen, right? That would become a public venue, right? You'll end up just like April Gallup. What happened with April Gallup? She took William Veal as her lawyer and added on Barbara Honecker as an advisor and basically said, oh, no plane hit the Pentagon. I didn't see any plane parts. And what happened? She had to go to court and she blamed 9/11 on Dick Cheney, President Bush, Richard Myers, and all these people. And the judge looked at like this affidavit and basically laughed at William Veal, fined him $5,000, and there was two other lawyers too, and told April Gallup, this is a frivolous lawsuit. It's as embarrassing that you came here with this and state that because you didn't see plane parts, that means the plane didn't hit the Pentagon. Meanwhile, over 115 people saw the plane itself. By the way, truthers like Jason Burmis and Richard Gage like to prop up April Gallup because, of all people, she wasn't outside the building when it happened. She was inside. She wouldn't even know what the fuck happened, right? If you read Firefight, which is a book about the Pentagon, the best book on the Pentagon, you'll notice that all the people that they interviewed were outside the Pentagon that saw it. And the people that they interviewed inside the Pentagon didn't know what happened. Right? It's obvious, that April Gallup wouldn't have known. But if you listen to her Library of Congress testimony, which is for the public record, she states that she couldn't see anybody outside the Pentagon. She couldn't see plane parts. Why? Because she fainted. And when they rescued her, she basically fainted. And the next thing she woke up was in the hospital. But Barbara Honecker got involved with her and saw an opportunity. And just like a vulture, a degenerate, old, decaying mummy vulture, she basically said, well, why don't you get behind the 9/11 truth movement, which we're trying to push, no planes at the Pentagon. And she did. And now you don't hear of April Gallup anymore because she got so thoroughly embarrassed at the 2011 hearing and basically got her case thrown out. This was a testament to Richard Gage. This is the reason why Richard Gage will never enter a courtroom. Never. He'll make a film about a courtroom, but he'll never be in a courtroom. And that's the difference, right? We have reputable people in courtrooms like Creedler, Motley Rice, right? They're at the Southern District of New York. Where is Richard Gage? Where's Barbara Honecker? Where's Jason Burmis? Where's Alex Jones? Where's Jim Fetzer? Where's Citizens Investigation Team? Where's Architects and Engineers? Where's the International Center for 9/11 Justice? Where's Oli Damgard? Where's April Gallup? Where's Judy Wood? Where's Christopher Bolin? Where's Rebecca Roth? And I could go on and on and on and on. And all of those people, I mentioned it and many more, will never go to a courtroom. They've never been in a courtroom because if they did, they would get the April Gallup treatment, they'll get kicked out. And then you have all the loyalists behind them saying, you see, we can't go to court because all the courts are in on it. And when everyone is outside the box, right? The ones that don't go along with your crazy, stupid theories, everyone's in on it or they're threatened by the government and they have to fall in line. No, not everyone is a paranoid schizophrenic and not everyone's a grifter, right? Two, the installation of the new team of board members with immediate voting rights. So far, I agree with this. Three, the rescinding of the illegal 60-day probationary board member policy for the removal of the current chairman from the office of chairman of the board. 5, the speedy resignation of other board members who had stated that they don't have time or interest in running the organization, yet won't step down. Kelly David. Why is Kelly David involved with anything relating to 9/11 when she can't even name when the attacks took place? 6, the turning over once again of all login credentials, passwords, and emails, anything relating to the organization. And 7, a prompt response to all questions and requests for documents such as meeting minutes, blah, blah, blah. I don't have any problem with that. But what I have a problem is this, Richard Gage, with you specifically. You say, we won't ever address the Pentagon controversy. There is no controversy, Richard Gage. A Flight 77 crashed the Pentagon. Now, the reason why you won't come out and say it is simple. It's what I've always said about people like you, because like Jason Burmis, who I challenged, and he basically just dismissed it and said, I'm not, going up against him, right? I don't care, right? I just challenged him because he made a challenge. So did DJ Thermodende. He ignored the both of us. Well, Richard Gage, I know why, right? I know why. You won't ever dare say it. And you know it's true. Is that because when the day comes, if that ever came, which would be a fucking miracle, and that you said that Flight 77 Pentagon, your own followers, over probably 75% to 80%, I'm confident in saying that, would not follow you anymore, and they call you a traitor and call you, oh, the government got to him. And that would be the end of your grip, because you're not in this for money. You're in this for money. And you're not in this for anything else. If you were, you would have done it years ago. I mean, you were doing this before I started, right? I started studying 9/11 back in 2006. You became involved with 9/11 in 2006, but you built an organization of engineers and architects, right? And grew. Okay. Now, here's another problem. You make profound statements, ridiculous statements. And one of them I'm going to play for you here. And this is going to haunt you for the rest of your days. I made a video about this too. It's fucking embarrassing. Okay. I'm sorry. It's embarrassing. Here's Patrick Ben David on the show. And this is what he interviewed Rich Gage. And I'll explain. Just listen. Just listen to this.
Some people, your critics, call you conspiracy theorist. Okay. That's what they say. So, why don't we cover some of the, biggest conspiracy theories of all time, and let's see what you say about them. Okay, where you stand with them. All right. Flat Earth theory. What do you think about it?
I don't know. I haven't looked at that. I've heard about it.
Okay, but you think Earth is round or flat?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen it other than what's been shown to us on the television. So what do I know?
So that answer is still not a certain answer. We know plenty to know that the Earth is round. But okay, fine.
Well, that's what we learned in school, and that's what I accept.
So you accept?
Okay, you see, if you can't see the problem with, I don't know, are you this dense? Are you that easy? Are you that eager to please somebody else? Right? Imagine saying that and then having the nerve to want to be taken seriously regarding about your issues with World Trade Center 7 and 1 and 2. To save argument, Richard, I'll agree with you that World Trade Centers 1, 2, and 7 came down by controlled demolition. But I don't trust you. Why? Because any other person who's not affiliated with 9/11 and sees that is going to dismiss all your work as questionable, highly questionable, and dubious based on that response. Because how could you, as an engineer, basically sit there and say, I don't know if the world is flat. It's what we learned. It's what we learned in school. I guess I'll believe it. And because you also propagate that, public schools and schools themselves, push, this is how we learn. We don't know how to research. We don't know how to use the scientific method, even though my whole channel is based about how to discern fact from fiction. And I'm a data scientist. And I just chose 9/11 as an issue many years ago to study. And so what I do is basically I use information that I have vetted, and I tell people that don't take it by me. I want you to do the same. And that's how you become an informed audience, right? You never do that. And for you to sit there on that show, watched by millions, and embarrass architects and engineers, which I thought this was, really bad, and then to basically embarrass anybody affiliated with you. on top of it, you don't know if the world is flat. See, the grift keeps going, right? Because that's the type of people you need on your side. And you know what? The public ain't on your side. The debunkers are not on your side. The skeptics are not on your side because what side do you push? You push, fantastical theories. Like I said, you could be right about the World Trade Center. You could be right about 1, 2, and 7. I know my limitations. I'm not an expert. I wish I studied. I'll tell you this much. I wish I studied World Trade Center 1, 2, and 7 more on a scientific perspective. But I'm very bad at science and math. Terrible. And so I'm interested in the psychology, in the finer details of the who, the what, when, and where, and why. Right. World Trade Center 1, 2, and 7 are part of 9/11. They are important. Even a devoted follower of yours, Richard Gage, whose name I'm not going to mention, basically said, I don't care about the Pentagon, Shanksville, and everything else. That's not important to 9/11. Imagine, saying that and demand that people take you seriously. So that's an issue I have with you, Gage, is that I think you're doing this for the grip. You're doing this for money, right? And a lot of these conspiracies center around no hijackers and no hijacked planes. But then again, at the same time, you want to blame the U.S. government for the 9/11 attacks, and at some point Israel. Well, without hijackers, you can't blame anybody because if there's no hijacked planes and there's no hijackers, well then there's no crime. If you're going to say that they were holograms and they were drones piloted by somebody, of course, again, you don't know who was piloting those drones and who's directing those holograms. You never mentioned once a name. Unlike that, on my table, there were hijacked planes. There were hijackers. I have people connected to the hijackers from the Saudi government. We may have another foreign government involved in the monitoring these operations and the manipulation of these operations. I could go more into that and have been on this channel. You can't, Richard Gage, because you can't make that distinction, right? The Israelis and Saudis were monitoring who inside the United States? The hijackers, right? They were also spying on the FBI, the DEA, and other government agencies. Well, guess what? If there's no hijackers, Richard Gage, that means the Israelis and the Saudis are not monitoring anybody. Now, go forward. Who influences our government to on the political level, on the geopolitical level, and to go to war? Israel and Saudi Arabia, right? Who is behind the invasion of Iraq? Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the coalition partners, right? They lied about it, right? But there's no hijackers, no connection to the attacks. This is the reason why I just don't take you seriously. Okay, I never have and I never will. But if you keep talking about the subject and you make ridiculous statements, of course I'm going to say something because I'm a serious person when it comes to this subject. I'd like to be. I like to think that I have a dedicated audience that doesn't just pertain to what I say, but to basically pertain to the information that I share, which is for the public record. I'm not sharing classified material. I'm just trying to help the audience to be more formative about this one subject in human history. A lot of the conspiracies that you push and others affiliated with you push basically came from foreign governments themselves. I'm going to play this video. This is Jamal Khashoggi, the man who was murdered by the Saudi Arabian government under the orders of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who Donald Trump just had in the White House. And by the way, Donald Trump is also against the 9/11 victims' families lawsuit because who are they trying to sue? Mohammed bin Salman. And with Donald Trump at the helm, he doesn't give a shit about the 9/11 victims' families. All right. Once again, Jamal Khashoggi addressing some of the stupid crackpot conspiracy theories that are still in existence today. And even back then, in the mid 2000s, were pushed by the likes of people like Richard Gage and Jason Burmis and all the rest, Alex Jones. Just listen.
الأهداف التي وقعت في مبنى التجارة في أمريكا هل اليهود لهم يد فيها؟ وهل صحيح أن في نفس اليوم غاب عن العمل من برج التجار عدد كبير من اليهود؟ والأخ عبد المعطي يقول هل هي من أعمال ما يسمى بالقاعدة؟ نعم هي من أعمال القاعدة، والدليل أن القاعدة قالت أنها من أعمال القاعدة، فلماذا نحرم هؤلاء الناس من أعظم إنجاز عملوه في حياتهم؟
هم فخورين بهذا الانجاز، فايش نبغى نحرمهم من هذا الانجاز؟ الا بدهم يعني اللي بالفعل دخلوا التاريخ به. اما حكايه اليهود والأربعين، اذكر ايام ما كنت في عرب نيوز، وللاسف الخبر جانا من وكاله الانباء السعوديه ورفضت اني انشره. قلت هذا كلام لا يعقل، الذي ارسله غير مسؤول، وكلام بالفعل لا يعقل. يعني انه يجتمع 40 او 50 يهودي ويتفقوا بين بعض يا مناخيم اليوم لا تروح العمل لانه في حاجه حتصير، ولا يكتشف هذا شخص الا محطه
discovered by Hezbollah
ثم نتلقفها نحن من واحد لواحد وتصل حتى الى وكالات
Saudis posted
الزمن، ويريد البعض ان ينشرها في صحفنا. هذه اخطاء، حتى الجهات الرسميه ترتكب اخطاء.
Look, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, you know, one of the reasons why he was murdered, maybe, right? So there you have it, right? Here you have the Saudis basically covering up for the Israelis. This is the reason why, you know, we're allied with both of these countries. They're both involved in the foreign intelligence operation of monitoring the hijackers inside the United States between the year 2000 2001. And just so happens that they flood the truth movement who are trying to demand questions. You know, the Jersey widows, right? That forced the government to convene a commission and a joint inquiry. And then, in fear of having any more future inquiries and commissions, will flood the internet, will flood the truth movement, the very movement trying to ask questions with disinformation. And it worked. And who to lead the charge? Alex Jones, of course, because he has the biggest audience. And then out of nowhere, from the grave, Barbara Honegger came, where she hasn't been heard since October Surprise back in the Reagan administration. All of a sudden has an interest in 9/11. And meanwhile, she worked for the State Department and she's claiming people like myself are like government implants and whatnot. Bitch, you work for the government. So I don't want to hear shit. So Gage, I have valid criticisms. I'm not trolling you. I'm not, you know, making fun of you. All right. But you're too knee deep in that grifting department. And look, if it's not about the money, Richard Gage, do it for free. Why not? Hey, listen, I put out 10 times the material than you do, and I do it for free. In fact, I'm probably embarrassed if I ever receive money. In fact, some of my Substack subscribers, I think there's like 4 of them, they're paid subscribers, and I'm freaking blown away. You know, I get a Stipe payment every month of $6.92. I swear to God, I'm like, wow. You know, somebody is interested in my work or whatever. Wow, I'm floored. I'm literally floored. People giving me money, but I'm not going to ask them. That would be absurd because, you know, I'm not in this for the money. I'm in this to get perpetrators in court, the ones that are living, and maybe bring attention to enough people where we could force a new investigation. You ain't going to get a new investigation if you don't know what the world is fucking flat, because the public is going to look at that and say, this is who we're leading the committee. This guy, you damaged your reputation. But you know what, Gage? It's not too late. It's not too late. All right. You can still turn around. You know, I'll use the vanilla what was the name of that movie with Tom Cruise? Vanilla Sky. Every second is a chance to turn it around, right? So I implore you to go against the grain. Yeah, you'll be a lonely man. Yeah, the followers that follow you, they'll be completely and vastly against you. But are you in this for followers? Are you in this for the opinions of others? Or are you to really get to the heart of the matter, the truth? It's not going to come from your wallet. It's going to come from here and here, where it matters. And you're going to be up against a tsunami of disinformation and propagandists and the ignorant truth movement themselves, who will cast you out. And you've seen that firsthand with your friend David Chandler, who you basically ignored his assaults from that loser, the zombie up north, Barbara Honegger, and everybody else that said that David Chandler's not a real truther. And they did that to, you know, people that are affiliated with him in his circle, like Wayne Costi. Ken Jenkins. That's what you did, Rich Gage. You ignored what happened to them because you were afraid that you might get the same thing, because you damn well know that even though you are a popular face, the people that could ruin your reputation are the people that are in your own circle. And why would they do that, Richard Gage? To keep you in line? To keep you pushing the stupid theories? And the only way you're going to make a living is by catering to these very same people, right? Because you don't want to get a legitimate job. Isn't that what you just said a couple of years ago when you got ousted by architects and engineers, and then you made your own website? And the first thing you said, I denied a six-figure contract from my field because I'm so into the 9/11 cause. Yet you make demonstrably less, but enough to basically take trips to Aruba with your wife Gail and basically make films based on fictional evidence about a fictional courtroom on fictional charges. And you know damn well that these alt-right conspiracists that are politically aligned with this alt-right, like the extreme, they cater to most of the crackpot theories involving 9/11. The evangelical Christians who are behind most of the false 9/11 theories currently out there. And it's sad to see because I remember when 9/11 you know happened. I when I ran into some of these theories, I really couldn't believe it. Really, people really believe a plane didn't hit the Pentagon, even though people saw it. For the little plane debris. Yeah, that's what happens when a plane explodes into a million pieces because the plane's a bomb because it was carrying 38,000 gallons of fuel. 38,000 gallons of fuel crashing into a building at over 500 miles an hour. It's not going to leave a cartoonish cutout in the wall. You're not going to see large pieces of the plane. And it's not like this hasn't happened before. And so now, now architects and engineers is without leadership. But at least they're without Andy Steele and the zombie up north. That's a good thing. I'm not against freedom of speech, but if you want to be taken seriously, you are going to have to let go of unserious people. So, Richard Gage, here's my challenge to you. Get on board with just the facts. I'm not telling you to join me or Nelson or anybody else for that matter. Do it on your own. But you're going to have to let go of a lot of things. You're going to have to get a real job because this is not something that's very lucrative. I'm living proof. I have a regular job. 2, get ready to come under heavy attack by the very people that support you currently. But you're not alone, Rich Gage, because I would say that I would hell of a respect you by doing it. You would win my respect and others. There are many of us. But you could rest well at night saying that now I know the truth of the matter and I'm going to go with it because all I want is to show that we can prosecute people with evidence that we have. And in the fight to get new evidence, we need level-headed people that are serious, that will be respected by the public, and we have enough numbers to force the government for a new investigation. But you're not going to get it, Richard Gage, at the current time frame with you pushing ridiculous theories or ignoring any part about 9/11. I don't ignore what happened at the World Trade Center. I don't talk about it, Richard Gage. You know why? Because this is not my field. I'm not experienced. I know my limitations. I'm not going to, make stuff up. My opinion is that, yeah, I agree with you somewhat, Richard Gage, that World Trade Centers 1, 2, and 7 came down unnaturally. Let's put it that way. Do I know how? Do I know who? Of course not. Right? You know how, allegedly, but you don't even know who. And that's your problem. Well, guess what, Richard Gage? Here, I'll help you. We have names to other conspiracies, such as we know that the CIA had allowed for the entry of 2 Al Qaeda operatives inside the United States, along with the NSA, knowing full well that they are Al Qaeda, full well that they had dual US visas. And from there, you had Saudis and Israelis monitoring these 2 men. I'm just going to stop there. Those 2 men were Khalid al-Badr and Nawaf al-Hazmi, right? So George Tenet is the director. James Parrott is the director of operations. Tom Wilshire is the deputy director of Alex Station. Richard Blee is the chief of station of Alex Station, who made the decision to basically allow for the entry of these 2 men without informing who? The State Department and the FBI. That's who. Wow. Names to one conspiracy that's covered up by the government. And now you know it because I just told you. And you could look it up. I mean, it's news all over. In fact, some of the newest, biggest revelations relate to 9/11, in which you even talked about on the disgusting Stu Peters show, of all people. At least I gave you credit for that one. You brought up the Canestraro document. See, Richard Gage, unlike your followers, I'm not here to be a yes man to you. I'm here to push you in the right direction or help push you in the right direction. I'm not a dick. I take this matter fucking seriously, right? Because I respect the people. And the only way we're going to get forward is by informing them, because information is power, isn't it? And I want to hold these people accountable in a court of law, not in a matter of public court of opinion. Thanks for watching, everybody.